I'm Lydia Palmer in RIT's Division of Development and Alumni Relations, and I am your moderator for today's event. We are happy to have you join us today, and we hope that you and our entire Tiger family are well and weathering the global challenge we are in. We encourage everyone to connect to the RIT Alumni Association social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, where you will find up-to-date communications and opportunities to connect to other Tiger alumni in your region and your industry. Those links are found in the chat box, and the chat box can be opened by clicking on the chat tab at the right of your webinar window. A few notes for our presentation today. If you are joining from a remote location and are currently signed in to your company's VPN, please close that channel during the webinar to increase the quality of the transmission. All attendees have joined in mute mode, and if you have questions for our presenter, please enter them in the chat box. You are joining the event using broadcast audio. If you wish to dial in by phone, dial-in information is provided in the chat box. Live captioning is being provided, and you can find the link to access that in the chat box as well. Today's presentation will be recorded and made available, complete with captions, in approximately 1 week following today's event. All participants will receive an email with the link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those into the chat box as well, and we will do our best to get you the appropriate answers. And with that, we welcome back Soni Sayana for the third and last session in our series, Introduction to Raj Yoga. Soni, our audience is all yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Lydia. Thank you for hosting me, and thank you to Stephen as well for taking care of things in the background. So welcome everyone, and welcome back to those that have been attending the past 2 sessions, or even the past even 1 session if you were there. So welcome back. As Lydia said, this is the final series for the final session for the series, and it's going to be on karma philosophy. So let me just kind of review the first 2. So the first session was on soul consciousness. The second one that we covered was soul powers, and today's is on karma philosophy. So there was a lot of knowledge and information thrown your way. So I hope you were able to take in some of it. So before we get going, we'll just start with a really short meditation. So let's all take a deep breath in and out, and out. As I bring my mind to the present moment, putting aside all the things I have to do, giving myself this gift of time. Allowing my mind to be open. Open to take in new concepts, new experiences, and new knowledge. Okay. So just a quick review of what we talked about the past 2 sessions, and I'll do that. And I'll also share about some information for those interested in going further, and then we'll go into the final session. So if you remember from the first class, we talked about soul consciousness, which was very much about looking at the inner you. So we are all familiar with the outer you. So looking at the soul and the two together, the human, the outer body, and the soul make up the human being, where it's this being part that actually drives this costume of this body. So it's the being, the soul, that makes the decisions and makes all the experiences possible. So that whole understanding of the soul is the basis of this Raj Yoga knowledge, and everything is based on that. And I think I mentioned before, when people hear yoga, And they usually come and with a mat, and they think it's about the body, where this whole practice of Raj Yoga meditation is about forgetting the body and really going in and trying to experience the soul and bring that to light. And I mentioned that I threw a lot of knowledge and information at you, and that's another thing. When people see Raj Yoga meditation, they're like, "Oh, it sounds so good," probably be sitting listening to music, and then they come in and they get bombarded with all this knowledge. They're like, whoa, not quite what I expected. So I'm sure some of you also had that experience from the past 2 classes. But the knowledge is very, very important, because to do and have a good meditation experience, it's hard just to go and sit and have music and try and relax, because it's the mind that wanders. And that's why this knowledge is very important, to kind of understand what's happening inside and then allow the mind to not wander, and that way you get a better meditation experience and really experience peace at that point. That's why this whole practice of Raj Yoga is very key to getting the knowledge out there. And once you have this foundation of the knowledge, that's when you can build on the whole meditation experience. So today we'll continue on with the knowledge share. So we also talked about the faculties of the soul, the 3 major ones: the mind, the intellect, and the samskaras, where the mind is the one that creates all those thoughts. So your thought that is in your mind just doesn't pop up, and it's actually you, or each one of us, that creates that thought in our mind. So that was something kind of new for me when I came into this awareness, that I am the creator of my thoughts. I'm the creator of my desires. So and all those thoughts then go into, if you're lucky, into the intellect that says, is this the right thing for me to do? And based on that intellect's decision, that becomes your samskara, or your personality, or your trait, or your habits. So what we were talking about the last time is that the intellect is not as powerful as it should be. And so we have a lot of thoughts that just come in, and we go right to our habits or our personality traits. And so if you have that, trait of being angry and you can't seem to control it, it's because an intellect, can't intercede and allow for a transformation to happen. And this is where the powers become very important. So mind experiences, intellect is a decision maker, and the samskara is a recorder of your personality. So this is something I didn't I talked about, but I thought it was worth bringing up just to go into the 4 different categories. I know I mentioned the 4 different categories of thoughts, positive, negative, waste, and neutral. So the number 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts are around these kind of thoughts. So the positive thoughts are ones that line up with the inner you, so love, peace, and all the things that are positive. Negative, which, the hateful to myself, hateful towards others, prejudice, being critical, all that comes under negative thoughts. The waste thoughts are the worrying thoughts, the ones that keep going on and on, the worrying, the fear, kind of like, the environment that we're living in right now is producing a lot of waste thoughts. What's going to happen? All the questions that come, the 5 questions: what, when, why, who, and how, anxiety that builds in. So this is where the majority of our thoughts is in this category of waste thinking. The last one is the neutral thoughts. And, these are more task-oriented, don't really have a positive and negative connotation. Ordinary thoughts, before I used to always say going grocery shopping, I feel like that's not so ordinary anymore. It's quite a task to step out of the house and go grocery shopping. But anything that's task is considered like a neutral thought. So just thought I'd share this slide with you all to kind of hone in on what exactly, each type of association of feeling was with these thoughts. All right, so the practice of Raj Yoga is very much about the shift to that inner soul. And we talked about the vices of algae, the anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego, almost like algae that sticks on, a wall where it changes the personality of that wall. That's what's happened to us. We have taken on all these traits that have masked our true identity, and all these things that were considered natural and normal, have not served us well. These are the things that contribute to those negative and wasteful thinking, and all that just creates, unhappiness or sorrow in our life. And so this practice of Raj Yoga is flipping that and scrubbing away that algae and going to the diamond within, who we really are, all these amazing qualities of our true nature, our natural nature. And this is what we strive for in life, because this is who we are. And so this practice of meditation is getting to this inner diamond, and that's what creates those positive thoughts. That's what allows you to have happiness in life and, have a good experience. So the second session, we review the 8 spiritual powers or 8 soul powers. I'm not going to go into all of them. I know we talked about that in detail last time, but I'll just call them out, and hopefully some knowledge will trigger from last time with the images. So we have the first one, which was the turtle with the shell, which was the ability to withdraw. So that is ability to go inside, reconnect with who you really are, and that allowed you to have a response versus a react. So that's a power to withdraw. Then we had the power to pack up. So this was very key to really let go of all the negative baggage that we've been carrying us that has only added more weight. No one likes to travel heavy with all those bags and bundles. So we have the power to pack it up, take the lesson and take that essence and take that forward with you. The next one was the power to tolerate, which was here the visual of a tree staying rooted, grounded, no matter what storms come your way. You stay true to who you are and let the storms go by. You have the ability to let the storms go by, which is the power of tolerance. And the question came up about, when should you be quiet? And so that's, also a power is silence. So when you are not being, when your self-respect, I said, was not in jeopardy, that's when it's not worth it, and just let it go. And that's where you have the power to let go. But when you have to, stand up for who you are, absolutely, you will not tolerate those situations. The next one was the power to accommodate, which was the ocean, and power to very big power. I know I talked about my experience with my mother-in-law, so that really is the ability to merge everything into the ocean and take it all in and really smoothen everything out, which was, the reconciliation attributes that come with the power to accommodate, big power. The next one was the power to discern, very important power for the intellect in particular, that uses its power to figure out what's the diamond and what are the stones, which are not really useful. So very important power to have in life. I don't know if I shared this before or not, but, for me, it was even using this power to look at my circle of friends, not just in action, what I have to do and what not to do, but even looking at the people I was with, people that had been with me for a long time. And maybe it was time to let some of them go because they weren't really contributing to my positive thoughts. A lot of gossip and going on, which was all not good for me. So being able to discern even the company that you keep is very critical. It's hard because, especially you have to step out of the comfort zone if you're trying to, move away from people that have been with you. But if they're not serving you well, this is where the power of discernment really helps you figure out who should travel with you on this journey. There's a saying that we say in Raj Yoga that, good company takes you across and bad company drowns you. All right, so the next one is the power to decide. So now that you've discerned what's right for you, to decide and actually carry through and follow through with the action. The next one was power to face. So this was a visual of the big tsunami coming forward, but standing your ground. Very useful power in the situation that we all are in right now in the world. But using the awareness that I have faced before, I will face again and get through. Power to cooperate. I think everyone's very familiar with this, something that we have used since very early on in life. So those were the 8 powers in a nutshell. So in summary, in and out with the self-awareness of knowing, who I am and using these powers is to really try and become that healer of the self, because we've been at least for me personally, been damaged along the way, you know, coming from childhood onwards, and being unhappy, discontent, you know, all operating from the body, and looking for appreciation, looking for love, looking for all of that externally. And in Raj Yoga, we call it being a beggar mentality, where you are with your begging bowl and asking for that appreciation, asking for, you know, someone to make you happy, or you're looking for a situation in life. If I get this promotion, I will be at peace, I will be happy, I will be worthy. You know, all of those things that we have hinged on very, very temporary supports. And, you know, doesn't really bode well for most people at the end of the day. And so what happens is we land up with this trauma situation, and have a soul that's not really feeling full and content and happy. And not just happiness in spurts, not that, you know, I'm happy now and something happens and my happiness is out the window. And Raj Yoga is all about having the sustained peace, the sustained happiness, and that feeling that, you know, lasts more than for a temporary period. And so it's where the shift is really looking at how to come to the place of healing with this knowledge of the self, with this knowledge of who I am, with the knowledge of the powers that I possess, and how to use these powers, you know, awareness of the powers and how to use them, both of them. And then that shift, you know, stop being a beggar, you know, you have all of that within you, and understanding your true identity really allows you to be that self-sovereign, you know, that Raj. That's why the word is in there. Raj means a king, who is a ruler. You know, you are the ruler of the self. And, you know, we've been a slave to ourselves. So this practice is, you know, get back up there, get back on the throne and do what you're supposed to do. And that's what allows you to have self-respect, you know, respect for the self. And you're not a puppet anymore to anyone, you know, and that's power. That's true internal power. You know, I think power is not used correctly in the world today, but power is, you know, inner power. And so when you operate from that level, then you can really feel full. You know, you feel the deep contentment. You have the ability then to help others. You know, you're not the one searching for someone to help you. You then become, you know, the bestower. So, you know, this whole journey for me, you know, reflection and hindsight, and I feel like I had the wrong, you know, operating manual for my life. It was just not right. And this whole practice was putting the right manual of what is the right way to operate this whole system. And so I was thinking of this operating manual as what would I call it, like soul operating, so like SOS or something. I was thinking about what this manual will be called, a new manual on how to live life the right way. So I wanted to leave some pieces up there before we get into the third session, because it gets rushed towards the end. So I wanted to put this out there now for people who are interested in learning more about Raj Yoga. We have the Brahmakumari centers in a few states, I think 18 states. So there is this link up here, and I think Stephen is going to post it in the chat as we go through each piece. So you can, there's actually a center locator once you go to the website, and you can put in US, and it'll come up with all the states, and you can look within the state and find a center that's close to you. And if you don't find one, we have two amazing retreat centers in each coast, the East Coast and the West Coast. One close to, if you're in Rochester, in the Catskills. Amazing, amazing place. I don't know when you guys will go there, but you know, when everyone can travel and be there, this is just you know, a little, you know, it's called Peace Village, and you really feel it when you go to that place. Just complete peace at that retreat center. So there's one in New York, and then the other one is in San Francisco. So both those two locations are alternate locations for you to contact if you don't find a center close to you that offers the Raj Yoga course. So what I'm sharing with you, you know, with these three sessions is pretty much an introduction to Raj Yoga, and there's a lot more to understanding the self. I've just scratched the surface. So And hopefully it's a good trailer for you to go and want to learn more about this whole practice. And if you're inclined to do it online, you're more than welcome. There is this link out here. I've tried it. It takes a little bit of patience, but totally an option for people that prefer to do things by themselves. And some of the guided meditations, which are very important, very key to this whole Raj Yoga practice. There's Meditation Lounge, and I did mention B.B. Butler's meditations in the first session. And the last one, an amazing personality. Her name is Sister Shivani, and she's the one that actually got me onto this journey. I was watching her on TV, and she just really caught my attention. She's got such a presence about her. And she does classes in 2 different languages, and definitely the ones I've listened to are the ones in English. So take a look. You can Google her, and she's got a lot of classes on the whole practice of Raj Yoga. So another resource I'll leave you with. And of course, I'm always available. If anyone has any questions, feel free to email.
And Soni, we have put those links up in the chat box, so everyone has the access to those directly. And we do have one question. And Susan's asking if Raj Yoga and Kriya, I didn't say that right, yoga are similar. Kriya?
No, about the other one?
Kriya. So maybe I'm not saying it right.
Kriya Yoga. I don't know about it. They could be. I think they're. I think this all, focusing on the mind, the mindfulness practice is definitely something that's no longer alien to people. So this whole practice has been around since 1936, and I think people are coming on board with adopting and changing and modifying. So you'll find a lot of similarities between these and other yogas. But most of the yogas I know, tend to be very body focused, but there are more mindfulness ones coming up. So it could be similar. I'm not sure. Sorry. Don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. And we do want to let you know that the recordings are being processed. We have gotten a question about that, and those will be sent out. So if you were registered for this 3rd session, we'll include the links to the previous 2 sessions as well.
All right, thanks, Lydia. All right, so now we'll go into more knowledge share. So, I can't see your reactions. Maybe it's good, because usually I get a very interesting reaction to this particular karma philosophy. So I'll leave it at that and get going. So what's the purpose of our life? So I've put it down to 2 big things: to experience and to express. To experience the best of everything to our fullest extent when it comes to relationship, the work that we do, nature, our own faith, spirituality, and then to express. And hopefully we're expressing the best of ourselves as we interact with everything around us, and hopefully, using our best qualities and soul conscious qualities. And so if we go back and just touch on, that, I'm the soul and have these beautiful qualities. So one thing that I really liked when I came into this knowledge of Raj Yoga was that there was no, concept of original sin that exists in a lot of faiths. And I definitely came from, that kind of understanding of not being quite whole. And you come into this practice, and then there's this, knowledge that no, you're just this beautiful soul that has all these amazing qualities. And I'm like, wow, well, if I am all that, why is life not always, all that? And that's why I think the thing of original sin kind of, I didn't really question it, because, things weren't always harmonious in life. And so as Raj Yoga knowledge kind of says, well, it's not really, original sin. It's all about karma. And so they have an interesting take on this whole concept of karma. So karma is, I'm sure a lot of you have heard the word. And so by the word itself means action. So I like the saying of saying your thoughts, words, and deeds are painting the world around you, which is absolutely what karma is. It creates your destiny. What's different about this Raj Yoga knowledge is, I always thought karma was the action, as the word says. But what was interesting is that the action is before the action. It's actually your thought being the seed of all the action. And so this was news to me because, you could do things and be doing things with your hand that might be something good, like, complimenting someone. Oh, you look so good. But in your mind, you're like, oh my God, if only they knew how horrible they look. So when your mind is creating that negative thought, that's your karma. And so the action, that your words might be all sweet and lovely, but if that seed of that word is, something negative, what happens is, that thought creates a vibration, and all our thoughts create vibrations. And the person getting that compliment, sometimes you're like, oh, I don't know if that feels, genuine. And that's what it is. It's the vibration that travels with that word that makes you kind of question what the person's saying, where you get that feeling. And so all these thoughts that we're producing are creating these vibrations, which are the true ones that create our karma. And so when you go into like a church or a synagogue or, a temple, you as soon as you get in there, it's a whole different energy. It's because the thoughts that are in those places are pure thoughts, positive thoughts. And that's the energy and vibration that is left in that place. And then flip side is, you go in where you enter a house where the couple has been fighting and they're quiet as soon as you enter, but the heaviness in the air is there. And that's that vibration of that thought energy that gets left behind. And so this karma, philosophy of the thought being the one that creates the karma was like a big aha for me. And so this seed, this thought needs to be of good quality and intention if you want it to be of good outcome. So really taking it back, to the thought was the takeaway for me in this understanding of karma. So we look at I, the soul, and look at my interactions that I have and my connections that I have all around me. Every interaction that I have is going to be creating these karmic accounts. So with my family, with my work, everything that I'm doing is accumulating both your different types of karma, positive and negative karma. Even what we're doing to animals and nature, we see that, right? And look at what's happening with nature. It's probably like, good thing those humans are in their cages, we can finally breathe. Nature's just having a blast right now. It's being revived, and so we've not treated nature so good, and that karma kind of comes back to us. Look at the storms that we're having, look at where climate change is going, and it's going to, and we see that, and we know that, we know that's going to catch up to us. So that is the interaction between us as beings and nature, and same thing with animals as well. So everything that we do creates a karmic account. So I think everyone's familiar with this. What goes around comes around, very much attached to karma. And when we talk about a negative, thought or action that goes out there, that you put out there, what comes back is, negative karma. It could be in bad relationships, bad health, career that's not quite going your way. And the flip side is, the quite opposite of all of that. Good karma creates, everything coming back to you in all things good. So if you look at your life and say, I've been doing good my entire life, but why is this crap coming back to me? And I don't see it. And you see the expression, why do, bad things happen to him? He's been good his whole life, and you just don't see it. So this is where I wish I could see your reactions here, because people, when I share this next slide, they're like, what? So the whole Raj Yoga philosophy says, maybe karma is not just this life, and maybe it's much bigger than that. You might look at your own life and not see it, but consider this. And that's what I'm all asking you to do, is just consider. And that's why I started meditation, keeping an open mind and open to experience, different kinds of concepts. And this is one of the concepts that's out there with Raj Yoga philosophy. And you might have heard about it. It's the whole reincarnation, it's birth and rebirth. And it's showing here, it's the soul that, travels through this journey in life, and a soul that continues on again on another cycle. But what moves and takes and goes with the soul is your karmic account. I know there's an expression, you come with nothing and you leave with nothing. But in this case, you actually leave with something, which is your karma that you have created on this journey. And I think this knowledge is very hard for people who come from very strong faiths that have a hard time, or don't even actually look at reincarnation at all. So bear with me here, and just put that aside for a bit and take this new perspective that, this is the karma that, travels with you and goes with you in multiple lives. And so, we talked about earlier how the soul is this energy that's neither created nor destroyed. And that's the energy of the soul that goes forward. And so Raj Yoga says, you take multiple bodies as you go through this journey of life. And this body would, it also changes. You have a male body one time, a female body. And so this karma, goes with you. And so these traits that are there, you might say, oh, someone has, very masculine traits, even though they're female. And so Raj Yoga says, those traits go with you in your sanskaras. Those go with you because that also is part of your soul. And along with that is your karmic account. Was there a question, Lydia?
Yeah, we do have one question. Emily asked, can this be related to intergenerational or community trauma, or is it purely personal karma? Sorry, that was hard to say. Can this be related to intergenerational or community trauma, or is it purely personal karma?
I think it's both, and it's hard to really pinpoint it to, where exactly went wrong, because, we don't know what happened in our previous lives. And, like I have my sister-in-law who lost, 3 family members in a span of a month, her aunt, her sister, and one other person. And so you say, is there a collective karma? Or when a plane goes down and all those people were on the plane or together, is there a collective karma? And when something happens to a society, or a group of people in a particular place, is that collective karma? It could be. And these are some of the answers, we can't really go into detail. And the people that go into past life regression to try and answer all that, which is something that Raj Yoga doesn't really focus on. It's more on how to move forward with this knowledge. So I don't really have an answer. It could be. And that's where I think karma has helped me let things go. So yeah, it's one and the other as well. And so this karmic account, here we're talking about in a singular way with a person's karma. And so the body that you have even is a result of your karmic account. And I think this really helped me when you see kids, okay, a young child just came into the world, has all these deformities, why? What did this child do? And so if we look at a much bigger picture, saying that, yes, it's a small body, right? We talked about the body and the soul, but the soul is much older. The soul has come forward. And one way to settle that karma is with the body that we get. And also our family. I feel like we settle a lot with the family that we have. Trauma, right? So we can settle a lot with our connections, and the ones that we have to settle with the most are the ones that are in your immediate family, and that's why they drive you crazy. So the law of karma is, that seed that I plant, is very, very important, because plant a good seed, it comes out with sweet, sweet fruit. Flip side, a bitter, negative seed or action is put in. What you get is a bit of fruit. At the end of the day, we have to eat it. Whatever fruit comes into our life, whether bitter or sweet, we have to face it, right? And that's where the power to face becomes very, very important in dealing with our karmic accounts. So how is this karmic account stored? I have a visual here of this, almost like a battery that stores up your good karma and your negative karma. And this is something that's being calculated all the time. So whatever we're doing, whatever we're thinking, that debit credit counter is happening all the time. So how we're doing and accumulating in these two buckets of good and bad karma, which we talked about, our thoughts, words, actions. The other two are interesting, our wealth. So what we're doing with our money is also contributing to our karma. And so I really went deeper into this with Rajyoga, trying to understand, what does that really mean? Because if you're giving to charity, isn't that automatically good karma? Well, to an extent, if the charity is doing something not so kosher with it, then you are getting that bad karma back to you. And so now what that has made me do is be very, very mindful of the charitable organizations that I'm giving to make sure that, there's transparency in financials. So, I know, or my husband and I know, that we are doing it for the right, giving to the right organization, especially with this understanding of karma. And even, giving to people that you don't know what they're doing with the money. So even being mindful of how you're giving personally as well to people in your life. So very interesting in how wealth ties into karma as well, and how we spend our time, right? If we're spending our time in a good way, you're accumulating to your good karma. So when you have good karma in your life, that's when you have a very good life experience, naturally. So what happens with this bad karma? How do I know, what I've done in the past, what I've, like the boy saying, Mom, do you think you'd have killed someone? Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to dwell on that. I don't want to dwell whether I've killed someone. But what I want to do is, try and increase my good karma. And that's by doing all these good actions. So then when you do a lot more of the good karma, then your amount of bad karma doesn't look, as significant. So that's one way to reduce your bad karma, is doing more good. And the other one is in settling karma through, whatever challenges come our way with diseases, with relationships. Sometimes when it comes to us, we can end up generating more bad karma with the waste thinking, right? Why is this happening to me? Why does it always happen to me? Or, what did I do to deserve this? Or, with the illnesses. So when we create, all that waste thinking, negative thinking, that's actually increasing your negative karma. And so if we see it from a different perspective, that, something happened, I don't know what it was, something happened, it's time to settle, it's time to close this account. You can see it in a different perspective. You can take it on and say, okay, how do I prevent this cycle from going forward, and be able to, reconcile some of those challenging relationships instead of creating more of that negative energy. And ultimately, it's just impacting us, you, the soul. So it allows you to take the high road and say, let me put an end to this. Let me put a full stop. We always say in Raj Yoga that the question mark looks all crooked. Instead of having all those questions, just put a full stop, saying something happened, I'm going to settle it now, and just move forward. So very much a solution-based thinking, instead of getting stuck and getting into this spiraling situation of ultimately not helping yourself. So this is one way to use the karmic philosophy to see things differently. And, the body will have pain, but maybe you don't have to have suffering of the mind by spinning and saying, why am I going through this? So All right, so what's the result when I am having all this good karma in my life? That's when you can really emerge these soul quality powers and qualities that we have. And that becomes your natural nature, because things go smooth for you when you have good karma, when, you create these plans and they just come together so beautifully. All that is a result of good karma, a little effort needed for good fruit. And when everything is happening and going good, and you're happy, and that inner happiness really brings about good health. And we say in Raj Yoga that there's no nourishment like that of happiness. Obviously, and everything is harmonious in life and relationships. So a big incentive here to build good karma in your life, and you feel clean. You're not harboring onto any of that resentment. You're just able to use all the powers to pack up, let it go, because ultimately you're the one that benefits. And to be able to see that benefit, allows you to maybe put aside that ego and say, if this person just wants me to say, I'm sorry, let me just do that and move on with life, instead of, holding those grudges that just weigh me down. So the last slide here is, how do I continue to use this? And, I shared this with one of my seniors in one of my sessions earlier last week, and she just freaked out. She's like, I said, you can probably see that everything is happening accurately. And she's like, there's no freaking way I agree with this, that there's any kind of justice in this world. And she goes, I just don't see it. And, I've lived in 3 different countries. I grew up in Botswana, which is in Southern Africa, and I've lived in India and here. And there's a lot of injustice in the world. And, if we are going to hold on to that, we'll never experience any kind of peace and happiness. And so looking at karma as potentially something that's always there, that's doing these checks and balances in the background, it's this higher power there that's taking into account everything that's happening, and the justice gets served in some way. I think has really helped me not to hold on to so many things. And we can hold on to so much sorrow in the world. We can let all of that live in us. We have to live in the world, but not let the world live in us. And so if we see injustice in the world, I think we can just really be pulled down. Absolutely, I'm not saying, turn a blind eye. It's not that at all. It's just that do what you need to do to contribute to a solution, but not hold on to it saying there's no justice, or, you can't move forward. And I think this karma philosophy has also allowed me to end the blame game. And that, I can't blame my parents anymore, I blame anyone else. It was very convenient that, this is happening because of, X, Y, and Z. But this karma philosophy, that if I'm carrying it forward for birth after birth, and it's traveling with me in the soul, then who's to blame? I am the one responsible. And that was pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy to say that no one is there, to take some of the blame, that it's all on me. But, that's even powerful. If it's all on me, then maybe I have, the opportunity to do something about it and take control. So there's a flip side to it too, right? And so this karma philosophy, also the acceptance, about everything in life. And, I've seen this with my sister-in-law in particular. She was married for 6 years, married to a guy who'd been cheating on her for 7 years. And very, very tough to get out of that marriage. But being able to get out and say, okay, when I was telling her this whole karma philosophy, and she was able to just, move forward with, letting it go and not harboring and holding on to, why didn't I see it sooner, questioning everything. So, I said, maybe we just have to settle with this guy. Something happened. You probably did something. And she was able to, kind of take it in a different way. And she's way better off now, and she's way lighter because of that. And sometimes, something traumatic like that happens, we can, define it and let us define it. And we let that define our lives and, bring us down. So using this karma philosophy to say, yeah, it's happened to me. I can accept it and I can, move forward. That's what it is about, moving forward in life. And so I was saying, we have an opportunity here to take this karma philosophy and use it to our advantage, saying, how do I change what's happening to me, look at it in a different light, and change the thinking and take control. And when you take control, that's when you create that positive energy, positive thought, using all your powers to accept, let it go, and in the end, live a better life by building that good karma. So the whole reincarnation is very much hard for people to swallow, but for me, it gave me a lot of peace. Just looking at everything around and trying to make sense of why is this happening, and why is that person like that, and I see my two boys even, just looking at their personality traits, right? Both of them, exact same upbringing by their parents, the same love, yet so very different. Those traits are different. Because they've come with their own, because their experience from the sanskars goes with them, that comes forward. And so when you see it, from that perspective, you can really accept them and not have any kind of guilt, even like, oh, why are they like that? What did I do? And say, no, it's their own karmic account that they've come with. It really allows you to, appreciate them as individuals and not do that whole compare and comparison, which is huge for kids, and allowing them to just be and appreciating them for who they are, and not saying, well, you're both in the same household, have all of that, so you should be similar to each other, to parents. None of that. This kind of, frees you from all of that, and you're able to see each one as being unique and, and gives a lot of understanding. So, a lot of benefits for me personally in exposure to this Raj Yoga karma philosophy. I think it's given me a lot of peace. So wanted to share that with you all. Hope I didn't rock any boats.
Terrific. I don't think you rocked any boats at all. I think that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Soni. You do have a brief meditation after this. Is that correct?
Yes.
We're going to go ahead.
All right. I'm just hoping we still have time. I know it's 1:47.
Yeah, I think so. There may be some people that drop off, but we should have time to do that briefly. Before you get into that, I will just mention to everyone that if they do have additional questions, you can email them to ratalum@rat.edu, and we'll direct your questions to Soni. And please, everyone, do visit rat.edu/alumni/tigers-staying-home for a listing of our upcoming virtual events. That we have quite a few coming up over the next few weeks, and we hope that we can include all of you in as many as possible. When Soni is done with the meditation, you will simply exit the webinar by closing your browser window, and you will get a brief survey via email that we hope you will fill out and let us know what you think. Soni, go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much, Lydia. All right, we will bring everything together with this meditation here. Try and keep it a little short, so hopefully you can all enjoy it. So sit back, relax, turning your attention inward. Seeing myself for who I am. A beautiful point of energy, a soul with amazing qualities of love, peace, happiness, power. This is who I am. This is my true nature. With this awareness, I can appreciate myself. I can appreciate my qualities, my virtues, my talents. And as I appreciate them, I can love myself for who I am. By not focusing on my challenges and my weaknesses, but instead shifting that focus to my specialties. I feel at peace knowing who I am. By recognizing my inner power, I can use the power to pack up, to let go of all the hurt, all the feelings of distrust, of sorrow. I can pack it up and let it go. It's not serving me. By letting go, I can feel light and enjoy this journey. With the knowledge of karma, I accept things in my life as they are. Everything comes to me for a reason. I can learn and move forward and end the cycle of negative karma. I have the power to create my destiny. With this deep acceptance, I feel at peace. Om Shanti, which means I'm a being of peace. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending.